Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And lately, Tom, it's been all about when we're going to get started with the resumption of the 2019-20 season. And it looks like the word, at least as reported by Bob McKenzie, is that they finally have settled on the two hub cities, one in Edmonton and one in Toronto.
Yeah. Surprising, right? I guess surprising in some ways. I guess a lot of this, the spike in the virus in different parts of the United States. So I guess that's maybe one of the reasons, like Vegas was long rumored to be the place here in the U.S., but they've got some more cases there. So maybe that's one of the reasons they left there. But then there's still all the issues now. Canada has to allow these players to come across the border, right? And currently it's a 14-day quarantine. So if they're going to start training camp, but when did they say they're starting training camp? The 21st?
Not unless it's changed. Wasn't it going to be July 10th or?
July 10th, that's right. Yes. So how are they going to, I guess, is quarantine considered like the league's quarantine? Is that going to be enough for the Canadian government to say, okay, you're quarantining yourself? A lot of questions there, but kind of interesting decision.
Yeah, but I don't think they would do that if those questions weren't bugged.
You're correct. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure they've had assurances by the Canadian government that whatever it is they're going to do will meet their standards. But I think it's a real logical decision. We had talked before about the fact that, with the cases in America ramping up in a lot of areas, including Vegas, that it made some sense to go to where the virus isn't.
Yeah.
And that is Canada.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Now saying that, like Edmonton, that's not going to be easy to create a hotel environment, I wouldn't think, that will allow them to, get inside a bubble, as easily as it could have been done in Vegas, where they have so many premier hotels where they could, close off floors and, really create, almost a biosphere type existence for.
Because you're figuring, so 12 teams are going to be going to Edmonton. So 25 players at least, or is it 30 players that are going to be allowed to bring?
Yeah, I think as many as 30 will, but that's not counting. All manner of who they're bringing with them, GMs, pro scouts, equipment managers, general manager. So there's just a lot of.
Is that Barry Trotz? Is that Barry Trotz calling you there or what?
Yeah, no, that's not. It's probably someone offering me a car warranty.
I get lots of those too. It's either a car warranty or a solar panels. And I live in a condominium complex, so it's like they keep calling me all the time.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you drive a late model car, so you probably don't need either one. So.
Yeah, I know. And they're calling like it's really urgent. This is like the last time we're going to 200 of those calls. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been the last time for me for about 11 years.
Everybody called. Okay, hold on. The important stuff that we got to touch on is your hair.
Yeah.
Any updates?
No news on that. Nothing has happened. So I've got to be brutally honest. The only person, because I do get emails from people who watch our show. Yeah. The only person who ever asked me about my hair is you. You're the only person. My wife doesn't even ask me about my hair.
See, but I feel the responsibility then for all the listeners out there. Like they're all concerned about your hair. They don't feel right. They aren't as close as you and I are, so they don't.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair. You're representing the silent majority.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that would be your way. Knowing your politics the way I do, I'm sure you're very concerned about the silent majority.
Mr. Empathy.
So I'm pretty sure about that. But no news. But. You're going to be shocked. One of these days, I'm going to roll in and I'll have it, trimmed up nicely, and you'll fall off your chair.
So no like recon on any of the places around your house there. You're waiting until the August 9th date. I think you have.
Well, I don't. I can't believe that I would wait that long. To be honest with you, and to be honest with you, I've actually been busy the last 2 days. I've had some assignments that I've had to get done. For a guy who doesn't officially have a quote team. Right. To work for. I have been rather busy. I've had some work to do, and I've had some freelance assignments, so I haven't been able to do that. And it's appropriate because The 4th of July weekend is, as you know, and as we all know, it's a very big social holiday.
Yep.
And I have rarely been able to enjoy it because what usually happens this time is it's free agent time.
That's right. Yeah. It's Canada Day. Canada Day today in Canada. That's right. Yeah.
No, even in Canada, obviously, this is a big weekend. And I've always been, knee deep in signings as well. And it's just odd that there's none of that this year. We don't know exactly when it's going to be. However, I did want to bring it up because TSN dutifully put out their list today, and there's some stuff on it that I wanted to get your thoughts on. The one thing that struck me right away is Dustin Byfuglien is listed as the number 5 free agent. What's your thoughts, Tom? Is he coming back?
Oh, I think he's coming back. I don't know what happened there in Winnipeg, but whether it was injuries or what, there's some story that as far as I know, we don't know yet. Maybe other people do know exactly what happened, but I think there's something out there. And I'll tell you what, I'd be lining up to get him. I like him a lot as a player. I guess there's some question. He's older now. There has been talk in the past his conditioning was not as good. His weight would get up there. So those are issues. But, man, the guy can skate. He can shoot the puck. He can kill penalties, run the power play for you. He's a big man who can hit. And if you can get I wouldn't want to go on too long of a deal with him, but if you got him on to take a 4-year deal like the Rangers did with Shattenkirk, that kind of thing, man, he could be a heck of a hockey player. I'd love to get him.
And I always feel obligated when we discuss Dustin Byfuglien to point out too, because a lot of people don't realize this because he has such a contentious relationship with the media, that he's also a very good guy in the dressing room. Guys like him. In the room. He's considered a good teammate. People that have played with him said, that Big Buff was fun to be around. Now, for the media, he's not fun to be around.
Is he tough on the media?
Well, he just doesn't like to. He doesn't like the spotlight. So, I mean, I don't know that he's. I wouldn't describe him. I've interviewed him. 4 or 5 times, and my experiences have been fine with him. He's not a guy that's you're going to turn a 5-minute interview into a 20-minute interview. He's going to turn a 5-minute interview into a 3.5-minute interview. He's not a guy that enjoys the give and take with reporters. That's just not his thing. His thing is getting on a boat, dropping a fishing line. And that's why I think it's not a definite that he's going to come back. I think if anybody could walk away from the game, and I don't know, maybe Big Buff, needs the money, but if he has invested his money, he's made a lot of money. Like if he feels he has enough money to live the lifestyle that he wants to live.
Why would he go through the whole process of getting the contract ended there with Winnipeg? If he's going to retire, why just retire then? Right.
Well, I mean, that's a fair point, but maybe his agent said, "Hey, let's keep your options open in case you change your mind."
And he's a Minnesota guy too, isn't he?
Yes, he is a Minnesota guy.
If he likes the fishing and hunting and all that kind of stuff, then, man, wouldn't it be make a good case for the Minnesota Wild to sign him? Yeah,
but is that their most pressing need?
For me, when I look at the Minnesota Wild, although I think it got better with the coaching change last year, it was a team that kind of, to me, kind of didn't have an identity. There was no jam to their game. They didn't. You weren't like watching their game and going, "Wow, look out, these guys are coming after you." I just think with Dustin Byfuglien, he's an impact player. He changes the game. He changes the way the other team has to play the game, because when he's out there on the ice, you better keep your head up. Like, he gives them more of an identity, a little bit more jam to their game. I like Sutter there a lot, but that's the thing that's missing in his game. Like, he's a great defenseman, but it's almost like he puts you to sleep almost because he's almost too good. But I just think they need a little bit more jam in their game, and he's certainly give them. That's what I think.
Well, that's fair. I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't go to Dustin Byfuglien and say, we'd like you to play forward. I think that would make him very unhappy, and I don't think you'd have much of an opportunity there, even though, he could certainly do that as well, and he's proven that in the past. But he likes defensemen. But let's take a little bit a harder look at this list here. So, we've got Pietrangelo at number 1, and I don't know how you could have a list and not have him number 1. I just think he's the best player available. And he's got a championship pedigree now. He's an all-around defenseman. He's good defensively. He's good offensively.
The leader.
Yeah. Now, at number 2, I think we're already going to part company a little bit. I kind of felt that that the defenseman Torrey Krug would be number 2, and they've got Taylor Hall. Now, I understand the sexiness of the Hall, but I just think Krug, is not going to cost you as much, and I think he can add more to your game. I like him quite a bit. I think you do too, because I think he's spunky in addition to being a really good offensive defenseman.
Right. I get my thing, and I agree with you a little bit. I'm not. I think Krug, what you see with him is all you're going to get. Right. He's at the peak of his game. With Taylor Hall, you're right. The sexiness is that when he's at the best of his game, he's obviously he won the Hart Trophy as the MVP of the league, so he is one of the top players in the game. The question is, are you going to get that Taylor Hall? And if you're going to sign him, I'm assuming he's going to get that 7 years from somebody, and that's a risky thing for me. It's like, okay, am I going to get a guy that plays at the top of his game for 7 years for the term of the contract, or am I getting some guy that I'm going to get 5 years out of him where he really doesn't do that much, and then the last 2 years when he wants to get a new deal, he all of a sudden plays great again? And I hate to be like that about a player, but that's kind of been his history. When he wanted to, he played his best hockey when he was on the last year of his contract. But the upside is tremendous. Listen, I like Krug, but again, and this is a good thing too. What you're getting. What he does is the best you're going to get from him.
But I don't think you'll have to pay $8 million to get him either. And that could be important in this environment.
Yeah,
where we don't know.
Yeah.
Or do you think he'll get? You think someone will break the bank for him?
I can see him getting $8 million. I mean, to find a puck moving defenseman like him is tough to do. Right? There's not a whole lot of those out there. Although this year we've talked about 3 already. Him and Bufflin and Pietrangelo. So all those guys are in that category. Typically, teams are always looking for those kind of defensemen, and he has. To me, he's proven to be one of the top guys out there. So
here's the thing. I would say that Alex Pietrangelo is the only guy I see on this list that I'm absolutely sure he's going to get the maximum number of years, just because of the uncertainty of where we're at. I would say though that Taylor Hall might be able to get 8 years from Arizona.
Yeah. Well, but remember, you've talked about the environment we're in. I think that with this collective bargaining agreement, there's kind of protections built in there that, okay, let's say you give Pietrangelo $10 million based on the cap being 81 million or 82, whatever it's going to be. And then, but because of the escrow system, he may not get that $10 million, right? So the team is somewhat protected. He's there, although the cap space is being used up, that doesn't mean the cash is going to be paid to him if the revenues aren't where they're supposed to be to hit him his full $10 million. So, I just think I don't see him going anywhere. I see him staying right there with St. Louis. I think he's such a backbone of that team. I just he is what that team's all about, showing up, playing hard every night. It seems like he likes it there too. He's part of a winning organization now. I mean, my bet is he's just going to stay right where he is.
Why would he take it this far?
Well, I mean, Stamkos did the same thing, right? He took it that far.
Yeah, and Tavares, and,
right?
Tavares ended up not staying. But people said he would.
To me, and this is a whole different time too. What's been going on behind the scenes? I mean, has he been talking to St. Louis all along? And maybe they've got a deal put in place. I don't know. To me, it's a good fit for him. To me, any team he went will be a good fit. I think he's that good of a player. Wherever he goes, he will help make that team better. And I think that's across the board. I don't think there's any team that's too talented that Pietrangelo would make a difference in their lineup.
Well, I couldn't agree more. The other interesting aspect of this list, and I like lists that sort of make you think a little bit, that force you to make decisions in your own mind by either saying, "Hey, that's ridiculous," or "Wow, I hadn't thought about it in those terms." But the top 2 goalies here, Jacob Markstrom. Now, if you had said at the start of last season that Jacob Markstrom was going to be in the top 5 hottest free agents, I think everyone would have thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Here he is sitting at 4. and Robin Leonard is sitting at 6 on the TSN free agent list. Do you buy that? And what's that say about Braden Holtby, that he is all the way down?
So they're all in the same category where at the end of this season they're all free agents?
Yeah.
And those two goaltenders are ahead of Braden Holtby? No, I don't know who made that list up. That's like I like Robin Leonard, and this is going to be a touchy subject, but he has had his problems. He's cleaned up his life a lot, but still as an organization, you still would have to be careful to commit to a longer term deal with him until you really know for sure. And maybe you never would with him. And that's unfortunate. I hate saying that, but compare those Robin Leonard and Markstrom to Braden Holtby. Braden Holtby is, I mean, to me, if I get a shot at Braden Holtby, I'm signing him to a 7-year contract. With those other guys, I'm not committing a long-term deal to. So I'm surprised that Braden Holtby isn't above those two goaltenders.
I wonder if this reflects the fact that we have such an unusual circumstance where I see teams cutting back on the years on contracts because of where we're at, and saying to people, well, and a lot of teams, you've already seen general managers say, well, we'll just adjust accordingly and we'll be careful. And so I mean, not everybody. I mean, people were already saying before the pandemic that there wasn't as much money to spend as we've had in the past. And, we've seen what happens in other sports when there's a correction in the marketplace. And a lot of guys are left standing after the music stops. Like, I wonder if this is the year where it's not that the teams don't want those players, but, they don't want to pay what they've paid in the past. So they say, well, let's just for 1 year be careful and not make these decisions.
So you're saying that all 31 teams have kind of got together. I think that's collusion, isn't it?
Yeah, but that for sure that would be collusion. But I don't think that's the case. I think the pandemic hit, and we've seen kind of teams go like, wow. Like, do you think there's enough money to sign all these guys?
Well, I think to me, but here it goes to the CBA, and that's one thing too that was reported on TSN too. That apparently they're really close to an extension of the collective bargaining agreement too. They've ironed out most of the details, is what it says. I guess it's going to be interesting to see what is in that new CBA, because with the current CBA, the cap was continuing to go up. So now they're going to keep it flat because of the total uncertainty because of the pandemic. But again, because of the escrow there. To me, I don't think it changes how, if I'm a general manager, I'm saying, okay, I've still got the same cap space. And if I sign like Pietrangelo, if I sign him to $10 million a year with, our escrow may be at 30 or 40% next year. So I'm protected. I mean, I'm still dealing with the same cap space. The cash payout would be different because of the escrow. So if the revenues don't come in to where we think they're going to be, then that's why the escrow system is there to protect. So that it keeps it at that 50-50 split between the players and the owners. So I just don't.
Well, let me ask you two questions then. Isn't that what just irritates the hell out of players?
Yes.
Is the fact that ownership does that, which forces escrow up?
Right.
And two, will they be able to do that? It appears to me that there's going to be some escrow restraints put in this contract that will require. But
if you don't have the escrow there, and I agree with you, you're totally correct. The players do not like that, and all the talk was that there's some restraint on how far the escrow could go. But at the same time, if you've agreed to a 50-50 split between the players and the owners, and so normally the revenues come in at $5 billion, let's say, but the revenues now only come in at $2.5 billion. Well, how do you have a system then? That means you got to lower the cap. So now.
Yeah, I understand that, but it seems to me with this new CBA, they were going to create an artificial cap and then give ownership or give the players some time to pay back that money. Is the way that I read that.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm not deep enough into the financial minutia to understand how it works, but I think we'll have to. And we're really even unsure that people are reporting it correctly.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah.
So I think we're gonna have to wait on that. But I do think there's going to be. I don't think you can treat this summer as business as usual. Well,
it depends how this new CBA. If there's really is a new CBA, and they're going to announce that soon. So there's another year left on the current CBA, right?
Yeah,
Right. That was the case. So then, really, nothing. You still got the same escrow there. I don't know that you really change much as a general manager. If I want Pietrangelo as a player, I've got to go pay him. But there's going to be some kind of a bidding war for him. So he can only get 8 years if he stays on his current team, which is St. Louis. If he goes to another team, it's 7 years. But the dollars per year.
Well, don't you think players are talking about that? Because that could be just disastrous for them. Like if I'm a player now, and what you're saying is that the now there is constraints because of the cap. I mean, what we're forgetting is prior to the pandemic,
right,
we had a lot of teams saying, and you could look at their salary cap situation and see they couldn't do anything. Like we know the Maple Leafs can't do anything.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of those teams already.
Yep.
And I said even before the pandemic that these free agents weren't going to have as many suitors because eventually the cap does catch up to you, where suddenly when it doesn't grow as fast as it usually does, then teams get caught. And there's just not enough money to spend on all these players.
Yeah, but we've been down this road before, though, where the teams always find a way to get it done. Like, so let's say Pietrangelo goes someplace else. Now St. Louis has got cap space that they can go sign a player, right? They'd probably go and sign a player. Would they sign Dustin Byfuglien? So now,
yeah, but eventually, but Tom, eventually you do run out of money. Like it hasn't because the cap's been growing a little bit and creeping up, and we used to be able to send guys to the minors, and they closed that loophole. Every sport has ended up with a market correction at some point, and hockey's never had that. Where we've had one or two guys that have not been able, but I think at some point we might have 8 or 10. Like I don't think it's going to be 40 guys, but yeah. I think this year could be the time when not everybody's going to get their money just because even before this happened. Like I remember reading in the Detroit paper, they went and listed how many people had money left. And this was just at the end of the season that they could spend in the off season because the Red Wings have a lot of money,
right?
They could spend, and it was a small list of teams, that had money. So,
well, it could be, yeah. You know what? And we've never been through this before. We've never been through that kind of situation where there's a market correction. We've never been through a pandemic before. We've never been through CBA negotiations during a pandemic too. So how does that all? What have they done on a new CBA to correct always the problem with the escrow system for the players? So,
well, I mean, if our listeners should. I mean, if you really want to know, what I'm talking about, just go to capfriendly.com and go through every team and see, next season how much available cap space they have, and you'll be shocked.
Yeah.
That there's not as many teams out there, and you can. I always say it all the time too. And it's a common theme when reporters say, "Oh, they'll never make that work," and I say, "Well, they find a way." Right. Yeah, you can find a way usually for one player. You can move a player out and do this and so forth. But when you're dealing with like the list that they have here, the top 50 free agents, and I think the writer pointed out there are like 250 guys that need. I don't know, that need new contracts. So let me look. I don't think it was that many.
How about today too? If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, so today, July 1st, is the day all the signing bonuses are paid. So league wide, there's about $300 million of signing bonuses being paid out. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are paying out $60 million to their players today too. So
that's okay. They're printing money in their base.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, but anyway, according to the story, there are 300 pending free agents.
Huh?
So, that's a lot. And, that's a lot of guys that have to be signed. And, they're being signed at a time when a lot of teams are tight against the cap, number one. And number two, there's worry about, it sounds like we're going to build into the CBA a flat cap. So, we've been.
Is that what the word is? The cap's not going to continue to go up anymore?
Just for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So, just for 2 years. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, again, I don't know what it's going to be, but a story I saw said that we would just create this cap for 2 years, and it could be a good thing because we may not have revenues to support even that.
Well, I guess that's how you control. If that's the case, that's how you're going to control the escrow then too, because then you don't have the escrow isn't as much of a factor now because you're limiting the cap. Well,
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, they got to do something because revenues may not grow. And, the one element that, you and I have talked about, but I don't see as talked about as often is, what will next season look like? Like, we're worried just right now trying to get through this season, but, next season, is it?
I got to tell you, I don't see how this is going to sound like gloom and doom, and I apologize, but how do we go forward with it? I guess going to Canada where they haven't had as many cases and it doesn't seem to be on the rise like it here is in the U.S. But already we've got all these players, and we talked about it last time. 3 months ago, if somebody had said there was one positive case in the National Hockey League amongst the players and we're still going to move forward, we would have said, no way, shut it down. Now we've got over 20. I just don't know. I'm with you. I guess the fact that it's going to Canada, they're going to be quarantined. It sounds like they can be much more assured that they're not going to spread it to everybody else. But I don't know. I hear stories today on the news where it's 95% of the cases now they think have come from super spreaders. They're calling them. It isn't just like normal people having a case of it and passing it on. So if you have a super spreader that you don't know about, it's in the group. To me, there's a lot of unknown, and that's the thing. There's just so much unknown.
Yeah, it is. I hope it's not our boys that spread it to Canada.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I know they're going to take every precautions, but you read now that initially you'd kind of heard that everybody was going to be in the bubble. I remember when this first started talking, you read like, well, the NBA is going to bring their own chefs in, and all the meals would be done there and all that. And now that you're talking about hotel employees are going home, and I mean, I understand that they all have lives, but that just seems like a recipe for problem, and it wouldn't take much. I know my friend Bob Duff said, the boys will not break the bubble when they're in competition. The boys will break it while they're waiting between series. That's when it'll happen. That's his prediction.
Well, I don't know. That's some guy.
You think they'll break it even during the
Again, now I know this is a long time ago, but I do that Thursday podcast with Dave Maloney, Ron Greshner, and Ron Duguay, and they were on the '79 Ranger team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals. And Phil Esposito was on with us last week, and he was on that team as well. And they talked about how when they won the first game against Montreal, in Montreal, Phil went to Freddie Shearer, who was coaching at the time, tried to beg him to get the team out of Montreal because he knew the guys were going to party in Montreal. So Toronto's that same kind of city, a fun city. And exactly it happened. They had fun in Montreal, and then they lost the next 4 games. Now, it may have happened anywhere anyway, but they all agreed that, yes, they were that young team, and they were having fun. They were out in Montreal having a good time. I've been in those situations myself. You're in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you've gone a long way, and you're in a good city. You're going to go out and have some fun. It's the night before the game. Doesn't matter. I mean, guys do it all the time, and they always play well. But we've talked about this. Players, we think as players that we are invincible. And that, the rules are there, but they're for everybody else. They're not for me. That's the way athletes think. So.
Yeah. Well, do you think players today have as much fun as you guys did?
You know what's funny? I hear some teams, like I hear the Washington Capitals, and I think they showed it pretty good once they won the Cup. They're a team that had fun. Right. But other teams, I think it's the makeup of teams like maybe Toronto is a younger team. I hear stories about them playing their video games and all that kinds of stuff. So it definitely not league wide the way it was back in those days. But I think some teams definitely have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, I think maybe this COVID-19 virus will put the fear of God in everyone, and
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. Yeah. Players think they're invincible. That's part of the reason they make it as players is they just think they're invincible.
Well, one final thing before we sign off here. Now, obviously, we're up to 4 players now in baseball, including name players. Ian Desmond, Ryan Zimmerman, Joe Ross, pitcher Mike Leake. They just said, well, I'm not going to play, and they didn't necessarily explain, but they thought the risk is too great. So we don't know. Maybe they've got parents, they got living with them or whatever, but they're just not going to play. How many players are we going to have in the NHL that are going to do that?
I'm going to start off the same way. We have very few. We'll have less than 5. But my concern is that I put myself in there. If we now go and play, you're in the bubble, and now the cases start to get more and more. At some point, the players just say, "Listen, I'm getting out of here. This is just too many guys." Even though they're asymptomatic and they're not in trouble health wise, they're a positive test. I think you're going to get some guys who are going to say, "This just isn't worth it to me."
Yeah. Well, if you're asymptomatic and you test positive, you really don't want to go home. You don't want to.
Right. But what the other guys though that haven't tested positive and their teammates are testing positive, and they're going to go home. Then they're saying, "Okay, I'm going to go. We're going to lose in a round here, and then I'm going to go home to my family." And possibly bring the virus back to them. That's a scary thought for me.
Well, and Fauci said yesterday that we could end up with 100,000 cases a day, in America, and that's just scary.
He doesn't want the people. He doesn't want anybody going out to bars and drinking and everything. And that's what, unfortunately, that's what young hockey players do.
Yes, indeed.
And old hockey players.
Anyway, as always, we've gone past our time limit here, but we appreciate you listening. And boy, hopefully we're inching closer to plan, because I think we all want that to happen. I think we're all nervous as hell about it, but we all want it to happen.
Be sure to see what happens. Yep, definitely. Talk to you next week, guys.